Hi, guys. Welcome to the DNA Show, a humble podcast by Dev and my co creator Anirudh. We are just two friends who one fine day decided to talk our hearts out to the internet. So, Anirudh, what are we up to today?
Well, hello, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are listening this from. I welcome you to the DNA show. And the topic that we're going to discuss today is something which is very close to my heart, close to our heart, and it's going to be motorcycles.
Yeah, so I think both of us put together, we have like more than 2 lakh plus kilometers on our saddles, and thus it makes for a great experience sharing with everyone out there. Uh, so, how do you want to begin, Anirudh?
I want to start with, how we got on the saddle first.
Yeah,
That's a question to you first. How did you start?
Yeah, so our origin stories are pretty different that way, right? I started riding very late. I'm a sort of a late bloomer when it comes to riding. Uh, I started riding when I was probably 21, and I started with a sort of a legendary bike, which was a 1988 model of a Japanese built Kawasaki Boxer.
Oh, I remember that
Yeah.
bike. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And for an amateur rider, it felt like the world had slowed down, and it was exciting. It was exhilarating. In a way, it was a good bike to start with, right? It was not very powerful like its contemporaries of the Yamaha RX 100s or RXZ 135, which I'm sure you owned. How was your experience with the RXZ 135?
Well, to put it back, I want to go a step back and kind of talk about my first bike, which was my dad's CD 100 SS.
Oh yes, I remember that one.
The Hero Honda CD 100 SS.
Yes,
Now we all
yes.
know it as Hero. But back then they had a venture with Honda where I had a similar engine from Honda, which was a Japanese built 1988 CD 100 SS. A humble bike, I think it had some 7.5 or 8 bhp.
Yeah, 8 bhps, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and my first stint towards riding, it actually came across when I was 8 or 9 years old. I used to watch MotoGP back then, and then it always gave me that thrill.
Don't say back then. You even watch it today. Every
We're planning
race.
to go there
Yeah,
hopefully this
I
year.
hope we get the tickets.
Yeah, we just need the ticket. So, uh, coming back to riding, I think it was a thrilling experience. Thinking of how we started, and for me, s- I really don't want to brag about it, but I started riding when I was 12 years old. I used to wash my
It's
dad's
brag
bike.
worthy.
Oh yeah, I was like a absolute
I
maniac.
was riding cycle at that age. So it's brag worthy.
So yeah, I mean, I used to go out there just to clean the bikes, and that's how I used to access the keys. And I just knew what the procedure was because when I was a kid, I always used to sit on the tank and see my dad how he used to ride. So basic things, I got it right. Back then, we did not have the internet to our access, but then it was just a practical learning that I did. And thinking about it, right, riding is like such a wonderful experience. There are more than 1,000 explosions happening right underneath you in a controlled environment, and it's just an awesome thing to begin with. And once I started riding, it never stopped. My first bike officially was the RXZ. It was a two-stroke beast, which I loved a lot. Of course, I've ridden more than 30, 40 bikes by now, and got a lot of experience on riding. What I wanna share is that you remember that show that we used to have back in Discovery called the Orange County
Yes,
Choppers.
the Orange County Choppers.
It was more of a dad son thing where they customized bikes, and that's
Correct. Yeah.
what got me hooked on. Like there's so much that you wanna do with your ride, right? You can paint it, you can modify it, you wanna make it custom the way you want it to be. And RXZ was like my first project bike. And to start off with, I think I painted it myself.
Yeah,
Uh,
I remember the white, right? White
it
and
was
red.
blue, white, and red.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a custom exhaust, which actually had a hanger rod in it.
Oh,
So it was ridiculously sounding bike, which people
yeah. I
were.
think that was the era when most bikes sounded ridiculous,
Yeah.
and people our age did ridiculous things back then.
Yeah, I do want to go back on how I actually started. I mean, what motivated
Yeah,
me?
yeah. Please.
I think one of the days back in 94 or 95, my dad gifted me this wonderful yellow colored toy replica of a Ducati 999. Oh boy, I was in
A
love.
good bike to take inspiration from.
Yeah, and the way it was designed, the way it just got me hooked on. Like, that's one of the dream bikes I feel like I want to have in my garage. But yeah, thinking of a Ducati, you had one. So, how was your experience?
Yeah, so Ducati came pretty late into my life, right? I would like to get the listeners to the starting point. Typically, because I have a very interesting origin story. Uh, Unlike most riders in India, I was actually helped by someone to learn riding because I started pretty late, right? At 21, when you start riding, you're very careful.
You're much aware
You're
of
much
your
aware of your
surroundings.
surroundings. So for me, it was a very different experience. So our common friend Abhishek, he basically gave me a first lesson in riding on a machine which I was very fortunate to ride, the Yamaha RX 100.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, RX 100 those days used to be the most legendary bike, right? It was
I
typically,
think, sorry to cut you off, but I
yeah,
think it was a commuter bike, which now is legendary because of the power that it had.
today's generation would call it chick magnet. It was that simple.
Okay.
And I learned riding on it. So typically, and what Abhishek did to me was, he my first lesson was while wearing a helmet, and I was typically trained to ride using rear view mirrors,
Wow.
which I'm sure even today people wouldn't understand.
I am absolutely sure about that. I think the fact that even the driving schools, they don't teach you how important the mirror is. So kudos to Abhishek for that.
Exactly. I'm so grateful to him that he gave me that lesson. And probably that experience of feeling the RX 100 got me hooked onto this as a passion. And it just went on from there on. So I started with the Boxer that I mentioned earlier, super machine. Then I moved up to a 150cc bike, which was a Suzuki a GS 150R.
Oh, yeah.
Again, a fantastic bike. Loved my time on it.
I remember a trip with that,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
riding trip.
You went out of your way to abuse that bike. I remember that very well. But
Well,
yeah, and then came the Ducati. So I typically upgraded from a 150cc to a 800cc. Again,
wow.
something I wouldn't recommend to most of people around, but I did it after riding for about 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
So typically that gave me the confidence to ride a 800cc machine, which was a very, very sophisticated machine. And mind you, Scrambler is a very simple machine to operate. It's a bike that can do everything with its own limitations, but it allows you to explore yourself. There is nothing that you cannot do with a Ducati Scrambler. And that's what my 2016 red color 800cc machine was capable of.
The L twins.
The L twins, man, those L twins.
I remember recommending a scrambler to you, and I was a part of the process in selecting the bike. It pulls me back to the first powerful bike that I rode, which was which is the legendary RD 350.
Oh man.
Riding a 100cc bike, jumping to a 120 or 110cc two stroke to a 350 two stroke. Oh my god, it was amazing. One of our friends, he had this RD 350 orange colored bike. The sound of it, it was a twin cylinder two stroke beast. It was just a beautiful machine.
Let me ask you one thing up front. Do you think any of the today's machines are comparable to RD350?
No. If I have to say it out loud, no.
As simple as that.
As simple as that. Now,
I think it's the best machine that has ever been built.
I wouldn't call it best, but here's my thought on why the machines that I can connect to back then, right? You think of it like all the modern machines, they have so much of electronics, ABS, traction control, and a whole lot of things that is kind of embedded in them. But when you ride the old school bikes, right? The Bullet, for example, the left geared one, you actually felt the pulse of the bike, with your heartbeat. And that's when you have the connect. And, you know, it puts you in a trance. It's kind of a zone that you don't want to go out of. And, that's where you feel like you're connected to the machine. That connection is very important. And you know getting back to the modern machines, after the RXZ I had a Pulsar 200, which was an India's first, I guess, oil cooled 200cc engine.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a 2008 model. uh, it was beautiful. I mean, I wanted the R15. I did a hunger strike in my home that I want to buy the R15, but my dad was like, "No, you're not getting a 1 lakh rupee bike." So yeah, I pretty much adopted to the Pulsar. Uh, it was an amazing machine. I did some upgrades to that bike. Porting the engines and stuff. So it was crazy. Moving on to something that I just fell in love with back in 2011. I think the Thunderbird 350 or Thunderbird 500 came out. 2011 or 12, I'm not sure, but I think during that period,
The Royal Enfield.
I just went for a test drive with my dad.
I know I have asked this to you earlier, but I'm asking it again. Why a Royal Enfield?
So, being a person who's ridden the old Bullets, uh, Bullets have a very talky engine. And when you switch from a two-stroke to something very talky, right? That gut feeling of acceleration, it's like you are in an airplane ready to take off. That's the feeling that you enjoy.
Yeah, but it never takes off. That's
It
the whole
does.
problem.
So the 500cc engine was okay. I mean, it had its own weird issues that I will talk about if we have the time now. But I just felt that initial rush. I just gave the down payment back then, and I had to wait for a year, I guess, around 8 or 9 months till I got my bike. I was so charged to finally have it.
You waited that long for a Royal Enfield.
Yes, I still had my Pulsar though.
You're
So
Gracie. I would never. See, my thought of a Royal Enfield is it's difficult to operate because it's heavy, especially on city roads. On the highways, yeah, it has a presence. It has you have some sort of a control over the bike, but it never delivers to the expectation. It's how do I put it? It's like you're always expecting something more out of it, and it never delivers. That's been my experience of a Royal Enfield. I have ridden your Thunderbird, but I could never understand
connect
why
with it.
people are crazy with a Royal Enfield even today. Anyone who buys a Royal Enfield, my question still with them is: have you checked out the market? There are better bikes out there.
Yeah, today I kind of agree. There are a lot of options, and you know why the Royal Enfield for me was simply because it was the cult back then, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? When you talk about Royal Enfield, the first advertisement that comes to my mind is not a Royal Enfield advertisement, but a Dominator advertisement.
The elephant.
The elephants. That's exactly how I feel about riding a Royal Enfield. It's like trying to maneuver an elephant on Indian city roads.
I think it kind of builds your strength to ride a bike
Go to the
because
gym.
I do.
That's better.
No, but you need a different kind of a skill set when you're riding a bike. You have to be aware of your surroundings, and having a heavy bike will just kind of help your your ability
Yeah,
to
yeah.
handle different vehicles, different sizes of vehicles. I've ridden the Versus 1000.
Oh man, that's a good machine.
You don't even have to
Yeah.
push the throttle. I mean, it's out of it's something I can't kind of explain in the mic today. But yeah, it is amazing. I mean,
So we have tested a lot of bikes, right?
yeah.
And that's sort of our weekend activity.
Yes.
When we are not podcasting, we are basically test riding machines out there. Uh, my most memorable test ride till date has been the Africa Twin,
Oh wow.
and that's on my bucket list, and
Is
I will have it one day.
you got the DCT one, or was it the manual one?
Oh, the DCT.
The
I
DCT.
see DCT for me is a value addition to your riding, right? You focus on riding rather than simply focusing on the machine. See, for me, riding is more about the journey than the machine itself. The machine is a medium to explore the journey.
Ah, that's where I differ. I feel like
Yeah,
once you're connected
I
with
know,
the
I know,
machine,
I know. We have two different schools of thoughts, but where we agree to disagree at most of the times.
I think that's where I think our folks who are listening to us can head out to our Instagram page, the DNA Show India, and write your comments on what you ride and how you feel about it.
See, one thing I want to put out there upfront is whatever is your motive, you will understand it only when you ride. Today, we are able to take the stand that I ride for the journey and Anu rides for the machines because we have put together about 2 lakh kilometers under our belt on our saddle. Uh, you will come to know that only if you ride enough. Ride anywhere, city roads, highways, off roading. If you can afford and you have time for that, please go to a track day. It helps. It's fun. But riding anything, ride a 100cc commuter or ride a 1000cc superbike. There's no difference. But to be honest, my most challenging riding experience was in Ladakh. So in Ladakh, in Ladakh there is this specific uh, location called the Gata loops, which are basically 26 curves of loops,
Wow.
right from top of the pass to the base of the mountains. Super challenging for someone who finds very difficult to uh, take the loops.
Was
Uh,
it like your first year with the Ducati?
this was, I think, my second year with the Ducati. Yes,
Okay.
amazing experience. Learned a lot. So Ladakh trip actually taught me a lot about my own bike and a lot about my own riding. What I discovered was I enjoy off-roading more than the uh, road riding. Also, I had a machine which allowed me to explore that path. As I said earlier, Scrambler is one bike which does things that you can't imagine, uh, and allows you to experiment with everything. So that's what I enjoyed the most in my Ladakh trip. I think I've shared this story with you once earlier, but where I really found inspiration further in the Ladakh trip was while on one of the passes. I think it was which is that highest.
Kardungla?
Yeah,
The
Khardungla.
Kardungla Pass. Yeah.
So I was riding in Ladakh with about another 5 6 other fellow Ducati riders, and I was the first to reach the top because I had the lightest bike. So I reached the top and I was waiting for my fellow riders, and I see a mid 20-year-old lady riding atop the Khardungla, which is, just to put out there, it's the highest
Toughest.
motorable riding road.
Yeah.
It's the highest
I think
motorable road.
right now it's the second highest,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's still difficult.
it's difficult, and
Yeah.
there are no roads. When they call it motorable, they don't mean there are roads. It's just about hundreds of kilometers of off-roading. So this lady who was riding on Khardungla on a pink color scooty pep,
Wow.
And for me, that was I approached her. I just spoke to her. I asked what was she doing there with a scooty pep, and she gave me a nice lesson. She said it's not about the bike, it's about the rider. Doesn't matter what you ride, doesn't matter what machine you own. And she was very comfortable in the scooty pep.
It's the connect.
Absolutely, absolutely, it's the connect. She was very clear that she's very comfortable with the machine. The machine is doing things that she wants to be done, and that put a question mark in my mind that then why do people own superbikes? If you can ride anything and everything, it's a very simple thing. Ride what you want to,
Yeah.
ride what you have. There are no reasons to say यार मैं लद्दाख नहीं जा सकता क्योंकि मेरे पास बुलेट नहीं
This
है.
this this kind of happened with me. So the reason why I got the Thunderbird 500 was that was like, any biker's dream to go to Ladakh. Unfortunately, I've not done it yet, but I'm planning to ride from Mumbai to Ladakh. That's my ultimate goal, and other places as well. But so the reason I got the Thunderbird was because I had this feeling that I have a bullet, I can conquer the world, and it was kind of disappointing. But
I told you.
so yeah, I mean, this mindset of having one particular machine for going to one place is kind of wrong. You can do it on any motorbike. Of course, we have thousands of options now, and the market is buzzing with ADVs. My going back to my first kind of superbike experience, which I thought after the Thunderbird was like a right sense for me. It was a Benelli TNT 300. I used to call it the Fury.
I used to call it the Chinese sound machine.
It was Chinese in make, but trust me, the quality and the build quality of it was way better than Royal Enfield. It
I remember once you forgot your exhaust on a highway.
it was a speed breaker.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean
I
you
did
forget
not
your
forget
exhaust on the highway.
it. But yeah, I think that was like a scary experience because all of a sudden I just
Sorry, I'm being a little mean, but yeah,
no, I
you have
mean, yeah,
had
it's a
stories
part of
which are very, very
experience.
weird.
I remember having my radiator failed one fine day, and I had to call the RSA for that. But then, apart from these two issues, I never faced any problems with that bike. I think that machine taught me how to corner because that was the first time I rode the Pirellis.
Oh
And
man, I've
Pirellis,
had my share of experience on Pirellis, and hands down, there is
it's
nothing better out there.
I I'm not experienced other brands as such, but the first time I cornered, I was so confident. It was on the Igatpuri Ghats. I was riding pillion with my wife, and I was knee down. So that machine
That
actually,
experience,
that experience
the
was
moment you
beautiful.
feel that tarmac on your knees, is when you
Yes,
feel you have done it.
yes. You actually feel like dancing, stopping the bike and dancing.
Yeah, but the second toughest job is coming back from that knee down.
The ride.
Yeah,
I remember a ride to Bhandardara, right?
yeah, beautiful ride.
Beautiful, right? While coming back, it was a pain. I know that we were riding at what 42 degrees, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, about 40 plus, and we were on the verge of fainting.
Yeah.
Finally, when we stopped at about 3 o'clock for a quick refreshment because we couldn't handle it anymore. But the machines were pretty fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
So
s-
yeah, again, I had the liquid cooled engine, so I
Mine was
didn't have to
not.
worry.
So I was not only struggling with the heat from the top, I was struggling with the heat from the bottom
Yes.
because Ducati Scrambler is a air cooled machine. So
And it doesn't help when the air is at around 40 degrees Celsius.
see what happens is when you're riding, you still are in a pretty comfortable position. But the moment you are stuck in a traffic
Oh yeah.
or you brake for a moment, you feel like somebody has lit up a fire under your ass.
It is about the 1,000 explosions.
Absolutely.
And into two because you have an L twin.
L twin. So 2000 explosions. And it was painful. I've had my fair share of struggles with the scrambler because I was also learning with it. Uh, it's a very fast machine, but it's an expensive machine to maintain. It's a Ducati. Bloody Italians don't make them cheap.
I'm sure.
Every part is expensive. It is difficult to maintain.
How much was a handlebar?
About, I think, 17,500.
Wow. Just for a piece of handlebar.
Yeah, just for a piece of aluminum alloy. And this was the exact question I asked the service center. I said, it's a piece of aluminum alloy.
Well,
And you know what he told me? Sir, जाके खरीद लो ना बाहर से. I mean, that's how Ducati is, right?
yeah.
The best comeback that I got from Ducati was when I complained them about the clutch. They said, this is how the bikes are made. It is a rider who has to learn to ride it.
The Connect.
The connect is different, but here you're telling me that the
You
bike
got
is
a
perfect.
flawed thing that you
Yeah,
gonna.
and everybody knows it, right? Out there, any sensible rider knows that Ducati Scrambler has a flawed clutch plate.
I told you, right? When you had an accident that we'll talk about later, but that's when I had his Ducati for 6 months
Yeah,
around.
about
Yeah,
6 months.
I rode it to office. I was like a star boy,
Yeah.
riding to a Ducati, riding with a Ducati, and I absolutely enjoyed the machine. As you said rightly, it's a versatile machine. But the moment I sat on it, I knew that there is something wrong with the clutch, and I think I called you up stating that there is
Yeah,
some weird
yeah, yeah.
noise, right? But uh, later on, I think when you got it back, that's when you realized that it was
So this is what Ducati's justification is. They say the clutch is not flawed. They say it's supposed to be ridden in the 18 degrees temperature of Europe
how is that fair?
and not the 35 degrees temperature of
Stop
Mumbai.
selling it.
No, it makes a lot of money for them. They can't stop selling it. It's easy to ride. It's easy to blame the riders than to own the blame, right?
That's true.
So recently, I've heard from some Ducati riders that they have made some changes to the clutch, and the experience is much better. But it's still recommended that you don't ride the Ducati Scrambler, especially the air-cooled engine, in the Indian city conditions.
Okay.
Period. There is
So basically, it's like a weekend rider.
it's like a weekend rider or it's a winter rider. I'm telling you, the performance in the city and the performance in Ladakh were
Poles
totally
apart.
two different poles apart. Uh, in Ladakh, the bike felt very, very different. It was way smoother. Uh, it had fantastic response. Uh, the clutch was working smooth. I had no complaints. And hence, out of the 30,000 kilometers that I did on the Scrambler, I think I did barely 2,000 kilometers in the city.
Okay.
I had a commuter with me for city use.
And what was that?
No, I don't want to talk about it. It was probably the most shittiest bike that I've ever ridden. Uh, I don't even remember the name. I'm sure you remember it.
Honda Hornet.
Yeah,
I took the delivery of it, so I can't
I know.
forget it.
I know. I mean that was a pathetically designed bike. I I may take some blame for it, but Honda has to take most of the blame for it. They have to.
They are busy selling Activas, so forget it.
Yeah, I mean, so it was a poorly designed bike because it's a front loaded bike without an ABS. So basically, you're setting up the rider for disaster.
Hmm.
Especially if you weigh more than 70 kgs, you're bound to get into an accident. And that's what happened to me. Uh,
Do you
this was
think this was also a part of your learning?
absolutely, it was a part of my learning because it was a part of an overall evolution for me because it gave me a lot of time to sit back because I couldn't do anything else. Once you go through a double ligament injury, you have nothing else to do for 6 months.
Cursing Honda that time, huh?
I I was about to sue them, but then I had one incident with the police during this period, and they made me realize it was all my mistake. The blame couldn't be taken by the Mumbai police for their bad roads or the
Did
BMC for their great
a
work.
question to you? Did you test ride the bike before you get it?
I did. But see, the concept of test rides is you can't judge a bike by a 1 kilometer ride.
I agree.
I want to put this out there. If there are any bike manufacturers or people working with bike manufacturers listening to them, you need to start giving bikes for rentals for people to understand your bikes, especially the super bikes.
Yep.
And I can't stress more on this. This will change the game completely.
kind of bring up the sales for them, right?
Absolutely. See, I have been thinking about buying the Africa Twin for last couple of years now. And the only thing that is stopping me is if I have to invest 22 lakhs in a two-wheeler, I need to be very, very sure. If I'm not sure about it, why the hell would I put 22 lakhs in a super bike? In a
Big amount
bike,
of money.
I can bloody buy a MG Hector at that price,
Agreed.
or
Agreed.
probably a second-hand Mercedes also. So the whole point is, if I'm able to rent out a bike for a week and able to ride it, experiment fully with it, I'm more convinced I would have bought the bike 2 years back. And I'm not a exception to this case. I have had these discussions with several riders in the riding community, and somehow there is a consensus that people are sort of scared to upgrade
Yeah.
because they're not sure about the machine.
I think it's also got to do with so much of information available. A person is confused on what he wants to put the money on. And as you rightly said, right, a 1 kilometer or a 2 kilometer ride will not kind of justify the amount of money that you're putting in. Like, uh, to give you more perspective, I'll go back to my thought of buying the KTM Adventure 390
Correct.
Thunder, as I call it.
Yeah.
So, when I wanted to upgrade from a Benelli, uh, the ADV market was at it's not at its peak, but then we had this whole new concept
It's
of
just the beginning of the game.
yeah, it's just the beginning of the game. Now, I really want to give a shout out to Shubhrato Marmar, Shumi, as he was the guy who kind of inspired me to get a KTM. So my options were very simple. I needed a machine with the range of 4 to 5 lakhs. I had a couple of options, and I finally downed it down to the KTM 390 Adventure and the GT 650. Being GT 650, the reason why was it. I love the engine, the 650 twins, beautiful. I mean, a very no nonsense bike. But I reached out to Shumi, and I kind of DM with him on Instagram, and he's kind enough to reply. So thank you, Shumi, if you're listening out there. Thank you so much for inspiring us. Uh, you know, I asked him. So being a short guy, being 5'4", right? My first challenge was, can a short guy ride a tall bike?
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm sure a lot of listeners have this.
Yes.
If they have not listened to Shubi,
I kind of still get, when I'm riding my 390 Adventure, I still, people walk up to me and ask, "Bhai, aap ye kaise chala lete ho?" And that's where I had the same doubt. And what Shumi told me is that it's the ability of a person to kind of understand the vehicle, and you just need to plan your stops, right?
yeah,
If your
yeah.
leg is not reaching out there, you want to just plan where you want to put your leg down to. He also has a beautiful podcast, his own channel,
The
Motor Inc.
Moto
now.
Inc.
So you guys may want to check that out for more of automotive content. But when he kind of told me that that it's not as difficult, so I did. So versus 1000 was like one of my first tall bikes that I've ridden. Our friend Kunal had the versus 650.
Yes.
So yeah, it kind of gave me the confidence that yeah, we can do it. But living with that bike was like a challenge, right? So I got a test ride done. I was sure that I had to buy it because Shumi said so. And you know I've been living with that bike for over a year now, year and a half, and it's just a beautiful machine. I mean, the concept of riding a tall bike is still not new to India. Like, people are getting a shorter kit, or I think KTM has come up with the shorter version
The
of the
shortening kit.
390
Yeah.
version. Yeah. So uh what I want to tell you guys is that you can do it. It's not as difficult. Yeah, okay. The advantages of having a tall bike is you can look above, right? You don't just see the
Yeah.
hoods of the car. You can see above where the traffic is.
Your views and angles are very, very clear when you're sitting on a tall bike.
Yes. And I think that's one of the reasons you like the
Absolutely.
Africa Twin.
See, and I think that's probably the tallest bike that I've ever tried.
But
So
sorry to,
yeah,
but
please.
the difference between an Africa Twin and 390 Adventure. I mean, just from the stance of it, the 390 Adventure is basically a Duke that's just made taller.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Africa Twin it has a lower seat height than a 390 Adventure. So the way you're tucked into the bike, right? It's much more beautiful than what a 390 Adventure is like. And 390 Adventure again. I did my Goa trip with it, so that was
yeah.
like my first interstate ride. I i kind of started around 5:15, 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and I was a solo rider. We didn't have anyone accompanying me, so I just had me and my bike, my thoughts. It's like a meditation for me.
Oh, extremely good point. And this is where I want to add in here. Riding for me personally is a great sort of meditation. You're in your zone. I never listen to music. I don't talk to the pillion if there is someone riding with me. So for me, it's in a space where you're completely isolated.
Yeah,
What you only hear is the sound of your own engine.
and the sound of your thoughts.
Absolutely, it's like
Coming,
a song.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
And when I started, right, I was a bit scared because it was like the first trip that I was doing alone. And virtually now that I have a kid and a family, I
you had
was a
to keep
little
it faster.
that eventually came up later. But then yeah, I kind of, the bike was so comfortable, or I got into the zone of riding like in a trance. I did non-stop 270 odd kilometers. I took my first stop at somewhere after Mahabaleshwar,
Yeah,
and it was 270 kilometers straight, without a stop for water, without a stop for peeing, without refueling. And that's when I realized, these kind of machines, right? It's like a sofa on wheels.
yeah, it's
It,
very comfortable.
it's damn comfortable, at least for me. And
So I think I stopped
I
Goa for
did.
Yeah.
I think I reached Goa around 3:34,
then came the fun part.
which was
Take the
less than 10 hours.
from
So
Kolhapur.
it's just beautiful. You exit, right?
Amboli Ghat.
Amboli. That's where the road to Amboli begins. And I think that week it was the Bullet Mania or the Royal Enfield
Oh, wasn't it the
Rider
India Bike
Mania.
Week?
It was the Rider Mania.
Rider Mania.
Rider
Yeah.
Mania. So I saw a bunch of bulleteers, right? And they were like going slow, sloppy.
Now you relate to the Dominer ad, right?
Yeah. And that's when I just realized I just had to stand and just whack the throttle. Like quick shifters, they work on and off for the 390 Adventure, but I felt that it was a plus thing to have. And when I had to stand and I just was passing all these guys left, right, and center, I was like, bad roads, not a problem.
Oh, saddling in India is a very, very underappreciated concept. Uh,
Yeah.
and I can tell you that because when I ride with a few friends who are really not into riding, basically ride commuters, and when I ask them to start saddling, for them it's like, अरे पर ये तो सिर्फ सुपर बाइक पे हो सकता है.
Why that?
Yeah, because they feel कि यार commuters पे saddle कैसे करोगे?
Mumbai roads, come on.
हाँ, exactly. So this I learned saddling in Ladakh while riding on the Ducati. But today when I ride a KTM 200, I saddle on Mumbai streets and it becomes so easier to ride.
Yeah.
Like we discussed earlier, right? When you're sitting on a taller machine, you have better angles.
Yep.
That's what saddling does for you. It typically gives you a better perspective from the
Yes.
top of the machine. Suddenly you see the gaps on the street opening up for you. And because you're not sitting, you are able to ride faster
Yes.
and typically put your bike on a second, third gear and you're free to move. And that's why DCT is my preferred choice.
I get it. I get it. I mean, I still would prefer. I already have an automatic car, so I don't want an automatic bike. I would still rather go to the hassle of changing gears. I think it's more of control thing for me. And you know, coming to the question, since I ride a KTM, you've got one. Uh, a lot of people have this mindset as KTM is chapri.
I think that is how it started off.
It Yeah, it kind of started off that way, but where as a mature person, right? Riding at 12, riding at 33, there is a big evolution that we have, and it's called safety.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, when I was young, I didn't care. I didn't ride I used to ride with a helmet, but small trips, it doesn't matter. And safety is such an important aspect of riding, because you guys need to realize that riding is a selfish thing. You're out there, you can die, right? It's a dark place. You could first be hit by a truck, have no limbs. But safety is something that we have to inculcate in our minds.
In simple terms, non-negotiable.
Yes. And I love the fact that you started riding with your helmets and your mirrors.
Yes.
I had a different point that back then, and now that I realize that I was a stupid boy back then.
Yeah,
But-
because I started riding when I was 21, so
Yes.
I was more mature than a 12-year-old kid.
That's why we have the driver's license
Yes.
at 18, I guess. So,
it's-
I when I go for the ride, I take my boots, I have my riding pants, my gloves, my jacket, my helmets, and I'm since we've ridden together, I know that you have the same. Uh, Safety for a common perspective of what people think is when you're riding us with the safety gear is like people either you're racing or you're too fancy.
yeah, I think latter is more often the
Yeah, but they
opinion.
don't realize that we care for our body.
See, what people think is because I ride at 60 kilometers per hour or 80 kilometers per hour, मुझे कुछ नहीं हो सकता.
30 kilometers is enough to kill you.
हाँ, exactly. I have heard people say weird things कि यार मैं तो बहुत अच्छा चलाता हूँ, मेरे को राइडिंग गियर की जरूरत नहीं है.
कोई और
मैं-
आके उड़ा सकता है.
मैं बगल में ही जा रहा हूँ तो मेरे को हेलमेट की जरूरत नहीं है. And I keep telling people, you can basically crash your bike while pulling it out of a parking lot.
It happened
And
with me.
accidents are not. Yeah, absolutely right. It's happened with
Your
all of
lace
us.
gets stuck in your gear and you're out.
Anything can happen. Today's bike manufacturers have tried to make the bikes as safe as they can. But the simplest thing is on a bike, you are unprotected.
Yes.
You're completely open to the external forces. Anybody who understands basic physics understands that you don't have to hit someone
Something can hit you.
easily, and that something can be a small piece of a stone.
Yep.
A pebble that's good enough to kill you.
Yep.
If
A
it's
tank slapper.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why for me it's a non-negotiable. Even if you're riding in a city or you're riding on a highway, a helmet, a proper certified helmet, either a ISI mark or a RI or a European or an American certification, whatever
DOT
works,
certified.
a DOT certified or a European certification, whatever it is, it works. It does its job. And to surprise of most of our listeners, helmets come with an expiry date.
Yes. The moment you actually drop your helmet, it can have cracks, fractures that cannot be seen to the naked eye. But yeah, you have to take care of your helmet. You can't just leave it out there. I've seen a lot of people doing that. They ride, they put their helmet on the handlebar, it
Yep.
falls down.
It's gone.
Yep, it's gone. It's gone.
The day you drop your helmet,
Yep.
your helmet is already expired.
Yes.
And to put things into further perspective, if you crash with that helmet, and if the insurance company finds out that your helmet had a pre-existing crack on it,
Are they able to?
yeah, so they want to save money, right?
Yeah, they'll find
They will
loopholes.
try ways to find out. They will they will send your helmets and your entire bike to a lab, get it tested.
Do that seriously in India?
If it's a costly insurance, it's a life insurance, right? If
Yeah.
you died, they are supposed to pay you big money. If I'm insured for 1 crore, and if the insurance company wants to save on a crore, why wouldn't they spend 20,000 rupees on getting it lab tested?
I'm not sure of that
See,
aspect.
I am a
but
pessimist that way. There is nothing more valuable than my life,
yeah, I agree to that.
because if I'm alive with all my limbs, I can make as much money as I want.
I think safety is another topic uh, all in that we should do a podcast on. And, to the listeners out there, I just want to tell you that, we have good Indian brands. Rhinox, I'm sure you
Mototech,
know.
Rhinox, Mototech, Royal Enfield. See, thanks to the Make in India initiatives, a lot
Yes.
of new safety gear manufacturers have come up in India. And riding gear is not very expensive these days. And I'm not telling you to go and buy Alpine Stars.
Yeah.
It's not necessary unless you are really riding a 1000cc bike. If you're not riding a liter class, a standard gear is good enough.
Yeah.
You need,
But just make sure it's certified enough.
yeah, you need a
because
helmet.
You've got many.
Yeah, there
faults.
are knockoffs.
Yeah, knockoffs.
So just avoid knockoffs. Get yourself shin guards or riding pants. Get yourself a very decent jacket. And if you can afford, get a proper certified jacket.
Yep.
Wind shitters will not do the job. They're supposed to stop the
Sport
wind.
shoes will not.
Oh
do the
man,
job.
sport shoes. I don't get me started on them.
But to sum it up, guys, thanks for staying with us so far. And I just want to tell you guys that just go out there, ride. I mean, that feeling, the feeling of freedom, the feeling of hitting the mountains, the beaches, it's just beautiful. You will have stories to tell your kids, your friends, and Gen Zs especially.
Or start a podcast someday.
I think a lot of people, what I see in the next generation is that why we need to ride was we have Uber, we have Ola, we can just go from point A to point B. But get on that saddle, feel that rush, feel that feeling of supremacy, and just share your experience with us.
So yes, guys, we will one day do a complete episode on safety gear, because yes, it's a very technical topic and it's very close to both of our hearts. There's a lot to talk about it. But I think that's it for today. Anirudh?
Yep. Well, thank you so much for staying with us. I hope you all have a beautiful day ahead.
Bye everyone. And as they say, like, share and subscribe now to the DNA show on whichever app you're listening us on, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Dave and Anirudh, your hosts for the DNA show. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to rate us on your streaming platform. This episode was recorded at manicpod Studios. Your executive producers are Ankita Dwivedi and Jayashri Pisharadi, and your sound engineers are Rohit Das and Manak Chakraborty. The production for this podcast was coordinated by Arnav Dogra. Stay tuned in for more exciting content.